Ladies and gentlemen, we are now beginning the third session of the day. Mr. Ambassador.
Hoş geldiniz. Good afternoon. My name is Jim Holmes. I'm the President of the American Turkish Council. We are privileged to have a distinguished panel of experts this afternoon to discuss the developing economic cooperation between Turkey and the United States. Our panelists represent government, the private sector, and America's first public policy research institution. Representing the government of Turkey is Deputy Minister for Science, Industry and Technology, Dr. Davut Kavranoglu. Minister Kavranoglu was educated at Istanbul Technical University and Caltech, Pasadena. He holds a doctorate degree in electrical engineering and comes to his current position from more than 2 decades in academia. In August, Dr. Kavranoglu was appointed Turkey's first deputy minister. Jose Fernandez is the Assistant Secretary of State for Economic, Energy, and Business Affairs. He is by profession a practicing attorney and for nearly 3 decades advised corporate clients on mergers, acquisitions, trade, and project financing. Tomorrow, Secretary Fernandez observes his 2nd anniversary as Assistant Secretary, a period during which he has visited Turkey several times, including last month when he led the U.S. delegation for the 7th meeting of the Economic Partnership Commission in Ankara. Taner Nakibolu is a 3rd-generation family manager and a member of the executive board of Naksan Holding, Turkey's largest and Europe's 3rd-largest manufacturer of plastic packaging, laminated fabrics, carpets, and carpet yarns. A bona fide Anatolian tiger from Gaziantep, Taner Bey was educated at Istanbul University. He holds a master's degree in business administration from San Diego State University. Taner Bey is also chairman of the board of trustees of Zirve University in Gaziantep. And Dr. Kemal Dervish is the vice president for global economics and development at the Brookings Institution, the past executive director of the United Nations Development Program, UNDP, vice president of the World Bank, former member of the Turkish Grand National Assembly, and former Minister for Economic Affairs. Graduate of the London School of Economics and Princeton University, Kemal Dervish is best known for his leadership of Turkey's economic recovery following the devastating financial crisis of 2001, a program of recovery which the AK Party had the good sense to continue after they came to power in 2002. Now we're going to handle this panel a little bit differently. We're going to get right into a conversation on economic cooperation. We'll have a round of questions and responses, and I'll keep an eye out for people who wish to raise questions or indeed intervene. If something has been said which is critical, time critical, raise your hand, let me know, and I hope in that way we can engage in a conversation rather than a stilted question and answer session. Kemal Dervish, if I might start with you. 2 weeks ago, you were quoted with the following. I know 2 weeks is a long time these days. So. If the new Greek and Italian governments are unsuccessful, there will be a serious slowdown in Europe. If the crisis deepens, it will affect the global economy, which will in turn affect the Turkish economy. The latter has already started to be affected. Brazil and the United States economies will also be affected. So my question is, have the new Greek and Italian governments, the Eurozone governments, taken hold in a way that gives optimism about the future? Help us to lay a foundation for this conversation by painting a picture for us of the global and European economies and economic situation.
Well, thank you. It's wonderful to be here, Mr. Minister, dear friends, colleagues. It's a great occasion, and I think for the future of cooperation between Turkey and America, I think this is a great day. Let me immediately come to the point Ambassador Holmes asked me to start with. I'm afraid we are facing a very, very serious challenge in the global economy. The situation in the Eurozone is really extremely worrisome, and we'll get into more details. The US is doing better, but still the recovery is far from solid. And the main point I want to make also coming from an emerging market like Turkey, is the following. There is a decoupling between the long-term growth trend in many emerging economies and what's happening in the advanced economies. So the emerging economies are no longer as dependent as they used to be 10, 20 years ago on what happens in the advanced economies. The trends are different, I think, for many reasons, the diffusion of technology being the most important one, facilitated by international investment, technology transfers, and so on, make it quite likely that the emerging world will grow at growth rates between twice and 3 times as fast as the advanced countries. That, I think, is true. And it varies, of course. China is not quite the same as Mexico. One can differentiate. But broadly speaking. So there is trend decoupling. However, when you look at the cyclical movements around the trend, they are extremely correlated. So it is not true that we're dealing with different parts, different economies altogether. The world economy remains highly integrated. And what happens in the US, what happens in Europe, or what happens in China affects everybody to various degrees, but affects it very, very strongly. So I think there is a common interest of all countries, really, to look at the situation in the Eurozone and the crisis there and really hope that it can be solved. Because if it isn't solved, and if there is a major sovereign debt failure in one of the countries in the Eurozone, if there is a dismantling of the euro, it will have a tremendously negative effect on the banking system in Europe. That will, of course, affect the banking system in the US, the banking system everywhere. It's already happening. There's a credit crunch. Credit is withdrawing. It's much harder to finance investment. So I think we are at a very critical moment. Now, the response, I don't want to take too much time. We may get into more discussion. It is not hopeless. At the end of the day, the Eurozone as a whole does not even have a current account deficit. And the Eurozone's aggregate debt is actually lower compared to GDP than the aggregate debt in the United States. So you have weakness inside the Eurozone, but you also have strength. And when you have a monetary union, at least when there's a crisis, the strong really should help and support and finance the weaker parts of the zone. You can then, once you've overcome the crisis, think about the longer-term issues, and these are very important, and there are many, many efforts that the southern countries in the Eurozone have to engage in. But I think the most important thing right now is to stop the fire. And that's, I think, what's being discussed now. That's what's being debated. Now, in that context, and to bring it back to the main topic of this meeting, I think both the United States and Turkey have a very strong interest in trying to help. Of course, Turkey is a medium-sized country, cannot be compared with the strength of the United States, but nonetheless, it can play a role. It is a member of the G20, and I think working with the US authorities within the framework of the G20, as well as within the framework of the IMF board, there are things that Turkey can do and that Turkey and the US can do together. I do believe, for example, that a contribution coming from the IMF on top of what can be done by the European Central Bank and the European institutions could help a lot in Europe. The IMF has a degree of global experience that is much wider, much longer than the European authorities have by themselves. They could contribute some special financial resources, not grants, but loans that would help the liquidity situation in Europe and help the sovereign debt problem. And I think the emerging markets, including Turkey, have said that they would look favorably on joint action by the international community to complement what the Eurozone can do by itself. The emerging markets, however, have said that this should be done within the framework of the IMF. And I think that's quite logical, natural. The IMF is a global institution. There is weighted voting that has to be improved and reflect the new realities. But I think complementing the European effort by an IMF effort, where Turkey in its own modest way can also contribute, the US can contribute, I think is very desirable. I would say beyond desirable, is actually necessary. I think discussions are going on. The finance ministers of the G20 are going to meet in February, if not earlier. Deputies meetings are being held. And I think this is under active discussion. In my view, Turkey should play an active role here and try to make that happen. It does raise the whole issue, of course, of rebalancing and reforming IMF quotas and voting shares. It is really time that the emerging markets, including Turkey, have a stronger place on the board of the IMF. I wish to see, I hope, a Turkish executive director very soon at the IMF. But it's a broader issue. I think the kind of weights in the IMF board reflect the world of 10, 15, 20 years ago and don't reflect the world of today. Now, very briefly on Mr. Mario Monti and Papademo, the new prime ministers in Italy and Greece. I think they're extremely respected personalities with great experience. And I think that it reflects an attempt by the two countries to bring a very competent government to try to manage the crisis. But there are two things that need to be remembered here. They must have political support. I myself came to Turkey more as a technician, but one has to work as a technician within the parliamentary system, and one has to have parliamentary support. I think to try to kind of give up on democracy because of an economic crisis would be a grave mistake. And I think the way the Italian and the Greek systems have to work, they have to work within the fully democratic framework. Now, both governments have received, of course, a vote of confidence in Parliament, but there's a big difference between Italy and Greece. Mr. Papademos seems to have a very short window, 3-4 months before a general election. Mr. Monti has succeeded in getting support for a much longer period, which I think, provided there is parliamentary support, is much more desirable. Second, they cannot do it alone. This has become a regional crisis, a European crisis. Greece and Italy and others, Spain, Portugal, have to make a big effort. But for that effort to be successful, they really do need very, very strong support from Europe and also from the United States.
A quick follow-up. Has the hemorrhaging stopped?
No,
it has not stopped?
It has not. Unfortunately, the yields on Italian sovereign debt have continued to increase. The yields on Spanish debt have increased. The discussions on the Spanish debt restructuring are going on, but without having been concluded. So, no, unfortunately, I wished I could say that it had stopped, but no, we're in the middle, really, of a major, major crisis.
Thank you very much for painting that bright picture. Secretary Fernandez, the United States has its own economic problems, and they're not small either. High unemployment, a truly tiny growth rate for GNP, political gridlock in Washington, which, in my view, denies all of us the opportunity to see a national vision for getting our economy back on track. Yet both capitals, Washington and Ankara, have set pretty lofty objectives for growth in bilateral trade and investments. And in your most recent trip to Turkey, you expressed optimism in the ability of Turkey and the U.S. to work productively together to deepen and expand our bilateral economic engagement. My question to you is, what's in your diet that gives you this optimism, and where do we get some for ourselves?
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm not going to give you my eating habits, but that's for another day. Thank you. Look, clearly the U.S. is going through some difficult times, but I think we'd be foolish not to look for opportunities. And the reason why I'm so bullish on the potential for the relationship, economic relationship, between Turkey and the U.S. is you've got a country that's been among the leaders, if not the leader, in GDP growth for the last few years. It's got big plans to become the 10th largest economy by the year 2023. It's got objectives that in many ways conform to things that we can do together. It wants to deepen its financial sector. It wants to improve on its entrepreneurship effort. It's got big plans on the information technology sector. It's got things that we believe that both of us can work together. These are areas where I think U.S. companies can be helpful. U.S. companies are leaders, and so I see a synergy. Having spent a lot of time talking to Turkish companies in my, I think, 4 or 5 times that I've been in Turkey now in this job, there's a disconnect here, and that's part of the problem. You've got which we've got to work to overcome. You've got an economy in Turkey that's in many ways it's a small and medium enterprise-based economy, Whereas in the U.S., we have a lot of large companies. So you've got that little disconnect there that we've got to work to overcome. But if we can do that, I see great potential in areas that where both of us can work together in. I think we're showing some results now. We've got, just last month, we had a delegation from 4 energy agencies from Turkey that did a roadshow here to look at, to talk to energy companies in the U.S. Turkey has announced plans to just think about that, quadruple its energy footprint in the next few years. Just think of the opportunities to do that. Next month, I believe, Commerce Department will bring 17 U.S. renewable energy companies to Turkey to look at opportunities. This weekend, Vice President Biden will be in Istanbul to co-host the second entrepreneurship summit on the innovation objective. So I think the opportunities are there. I'm not going to minimize the fact that we've got a difficult road in the sense that we've got a difficult time in the U.S. and we've got we've got great competition. At this point, Turkey is a country where you've got a lot of countries that want to do business in. So I think we're not alone, but I do think that the kinds of industries, the kinds of plans that Turkey has announced it wants to concentrate on, energy, entrepreneurship, financial sector, are things that we can work on. And that's why one of the first things that I did when I took this job is I decided that rather than meeting once a year for Economic Partnership Commission, that we wanted to meet twice a year, that there was opportunity there, and unless we took advantage of it, somebody else was going to do that. And so I think the opportunities are there, but I think from the point of view of the U.S. business angle, I think the time to take advantage of it is now.
If I might just follow up, Secretary Fernandez, with that. In your outreach to American business, what are you discovering when you talk to them about Turkey? Are they also seeing opportunity, or are they operating on 1980, 1990s conventional wisdom that it's a tough place to do business?
Well, you know, from my time in the private sector, people will talk about the challenges. We'll talk about the on the pharmaceutical side. They will talk about how you know there could be $1 billion market, and they would love to invest in Turkey if the intellectual property issues were resolved and some of the pharmaceutical certificates were easier to obtain. I think people do see the energy potential, and they also see that Turkey would be a wonderful place to expand into the neighboring countries. And I'm also seeing more and more on the part of U.S. infrastructure companies a desire to work together with Turkish companies in North Africa and the rest of the Middle East.
Thank you. Minister Kavranoglu, not too many years ago, in fact, only about 5 years ago, most of Turkey's export eggs were in one basket, labeled textiles and garments. China took the eggs and the basket. And with the end of the textile quota regime, Turkey's exports to the United States have been very slow in adjusting since then. Now, Turkey's aspirations are to do much better in the American marketplace with value-added products like automotive and IT products, iron steel products, bathroom, kitchen tiles and fixtures, high-end design content, etc. You're the Deputy Minister for Science, Industry, and Technology. What can your ministry or any other Turkish ministries do to help Turkish exporters with high value-added products that can be successful in the American marketplace?
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. Distinguished guests, it's an honor for me to have the chance to address to you today here. We are in the 6-day trip that I am having in the United States. And it is exactly for this reason we are here. We visited several universities and companies in Southern California, in Los Angeles area. Then we spent a day in San Jose, then we went to Seattle, and I am here today. And tomorrow I will be in Boston to meet several scientists and university and academicians and companies, and New York, etc. So we are looking forward to the future to have a high-tech economy in Turkey. Currently, high-tech products form only 5% of our exports. As you said, just in the 80s, our total export was about $1.5 billion to the world. In 20 years after Ozal's initiatives and his innovative approach, he made thousands of Turkish businessmen start doing exports all around the world. And the beginning of like 2000s, Turkish exports started to have more industrial content, and we had about $30 billion annual export. Now, in the last 9 years, under our Prime Minister's administration, we are in the level of now, by the end of this year, we expect to be a little over $135 billion. And as our Minister Şimşek just said during the lunch, we are hoping and we are aiming to bring our economy to a level that annual export is $500 billion in year 2023. Of course, to go from 135 to $500 billion, you cannot do that with textiles and eggs. So we have to have high-tech economy. So our aim is to have, like in our export, 20% high-tech content in the year 2023. Now we are at 5% now, and we want to have it and $500 billion. Out of $500 billion, we want to have 20% of it should be high-tech products. And in the year 2023, we aim to be one of the 10th largest economies in the world. And we want to grow our trade volume in the US as well. Today we have $15 billion trade volume in the US. And this is also one of the rare countries that the US has a trade imbalance in favor of the US. So it's out of $15 billion, we are exporting only $4 billion to the US, and US is exporting $11 billion to Turkey. So we are not like other countries, we are benefiting a lot from that. How about we take this to $100 billion in year 2023? As our Minister Şimşek just mentioned, your total, we are fifth of 1% of your total imports. So it's like negligible amount for you. So we should reshape our economy. We should work together. I also want to give a personal touch to my visit that we just arrived in the evening, as a matter of fact, of the Thanksgiving night. The following morning, my friends at Caltech, at 9:30 in the morning, they were kind enough to meet our Minister Nihat Ergün and myself and our delegation. And they gave us 3 hours of presentation. They showed us their high-tech projects and what we can do together. And it was very impressive. I'm deeply impressed that after so many years, I had very good experience there as a master's and PhD student. And later on, I was a visiting professor for a while. And it is encouraging for us to see this kind of forthcoming approach by US universities and companies that we met during the last few days. And we had very fruitful meetings with Microsoft, Apple, and many other high-tech companies all around the West Coast. And we hope to go forward with these high-tech industries. Of course, our government is doing a lot to encourage, to transform our industry into a high-tech industry. A few years ago, our government passed a law to give incentives great incentives for R&D centers. If any company, being foreign company or Turkish company, opens an R&D center in Turkey, they will have no employment tax and many other great benefits. And they will also be eligible for all kinds of R&D incentives we are offering. Like our government will sponsor 75% of their R&D expenditure if they have an approved project. We are also setting up a new Silicon Valley kind of technopark close to Istanbul in Gebze. It's like 4 million square meters of land. And we are inviting all high-tech companies from US and elsewhere to set up their facility there. This area will have not only an R&D center incentives, it will also have free zone incentives. That means if they do manufacturing there, they can import their raw material with no duty. And they can also import from domestic market with no value-added tax. And they will have no income tax till year 2023 and many other incentives. So Turkey is really the land of opportunity for all high-tech companies. We don't want anybody to come and manufacture textiles or eggs for us. But we are just opening our arms for all international companies to come and partner with us. We don't want anymore continue like high-tech companies manufacture somewhere around the world, and we use our textile money earned from selling textile to buy high-tech products. We want to do together. We want to partner with high-tech companies, develop technology in Turkey, and you sell to Turkish market and elsewhere as well. I don't want to take more time, but
let me just briefly follow up. Turkey's had a tough time getting high-tech companies in the United States in particular to listen to the message that Turkey is now mature in terms of its IT high technology capabilities. Are you finding receptivity to your message as you go through the high-tech companies in the United States?
I think the ice started to melt. Yes, it is coming over. By the way, I should mention also that I was here 2 months ago. We signed an agreement with SBA, United States Small Business Administration, and MBDA, Minority Business Development Agency, to encourage cooperation between Turkish medium and small businesses and United States small businesses. So here our aim is to help Turkish companies to enter the US market hand in hand with United States small and medium businesses or minority companies, and vice versa in Turkey. So I am here also today. I'm going to meet both administrators this afternoon after this meeting to follow up on this. We are very serious about this, that our Turkish economy is mostly based on not large-sized companies, but small and medium businesses. Like 98% of Turkish companies are small and medium businesses, and most of the employment, a great number of employment is provided by small and medium businesses. And if Turkey is going to be a $1 trillion economy, it's going to be by helping these small and medium businesses in Turkey. So I hope that we will be able to form the synergy and go forward from here and achieve $100 billion trade volume with the United States. Do you agree, Mr. Fernandez?
Yes.
Okay, but it should be balanced, 50 for you, 50 for us. Okay?
Thank you very much. Taner Bey, you are the sole representative of the private sector on this panel. You have a company, Naksan, which is a large producer of consumer products. I understand that your company exports to more than 80 countries worldwide, also to the United States. What is it that makes America such a difficult marketplace for Turkish companies and Turkish products? What is your experience in finding markets in the United States?
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Well, I'm a market actor who is in the field. So before my point, I want to remind you that my aim is to bring some practical insights. Secondly, I live in Gaziantep, which is in the southeast of Turkey, 38 miles from Syria border, which is a critical point. It was frightening for us because it was too far away. And when we aim to enter the United States market, the volumes were incredibly big. So before we enter, we decided to enlarge our capacity. So we bought high capacity machines. Then when we tried to enter again to the United States, we saw that Chinese companies producing low quality but big amount of bags, for example. Then we decided to enter high quality products, and we entered by flexible printed shopping bags. For example, one of the shopping bags we produced for Disney stores, very famous Disney stores. Basically, I have 3 points to increase, to advance United States-Turkish business relations. Small and medium-sized companies are so critical. So we should develop a correct strategy to include them into the formula. These companies are the backbone of recent economic activism in Turkey. So the unit of analysis should be these companies. Without a correct analysis of them, we cannot be optimistic in bilateral trade. These small business enterprises, Turkey's main problem is the well-educated young people. So we decided to open a non-profit foundation university in Gaziantep. This is the 3rd year of the university. The name is Zirve, pinnacle, top, peak. The name is coming from this. And in the 3rd year, we have 3,000 students from especially southeast and eastern part of Turkey. And our first start with University of North Texas to teach the American English to our students. And by this connection, we brought around 32 American teachers. The crisis helped us to find American teachers. They were even sometimes taking less money than Turkish teachers. And now they are living in Gaziantep. They are very happy. Inshallah, 2-3 years later, we will have thousands of English-speaking students. And second one, we start with Apple in our university. It was the first university that Apple told us in the world started with Apple system. And we have wireless free of charge, 50 megabits, not like here. It is $15 for 1 day. So it is free of charge. So
And that's cheap.
students, we gave every student one Apple MacBook Pro first year, and it was not advertised. When they came to university, they saw that one free of charge Apple MacBook. Then second year we gave MacBook Pro, then MacBook Air. And then this year the MacBook Air small one, the 11-inch. And then we found very good academics all over the world. We have academics from United States, Italy, Hong Kong, China, Japan. And then we said the third point is to learn their subject, their major very well, and also they should make practice in Gaziantep industrial area. Gaziantep is the 6th biggest and largest city of Turkey, within 100 cities. And the industrial zone with around 700 companies. It's the biggest one in Turkey. So there is a laboratory for them. And then second question, how to connect Turkey and the US through small and medium-sized companies. This is the, I feel TUSCON-style organizations are significant. Here also this Turkish-American Alliance or other Turkish-American Alliance groups will help our connections in the future also. And also I want to mention that the US government should develop a new strategy on energy, as Sir Fernandez told. Turkish companies are very successful in construction in Libya or other countries, but it is not satisfactory. The US should develop a higher level strategy also in energy and construction. Despite having 50 years of friendship, the US help to Turkey in global energy market is weak, but we heard that there is an organization already. Finally, both sides should update their strategies according to the outcomes of two developments. One, global economic crisis, two, Arab Spring. We should revisit our former understanding based on the new statu quo, both in world economy and Arab world. Thank you very much for this.
Well, thank you for that, and thank you as well for describing both your own experience, but also I think a reality of SMEs in Turkey. SMEs, as you described, are not only small and medium sized, they are also risk takers, and as you point out, they're also prepared to quickly adapt innovation.
Yes.
And I think those are two strengths on which you can build, and you have described a grassroots, ground-up sort of effort by beginning with your students to train them to take advantage of the opportunities for domestic consumption and production, but also for exports. Secretary Fernandez, if I could turn back to you for a moment. I often hear from Turks, and I think you probably do as well, about trade incentives, things like free trade agreements and QIZs. Recently, we finally got ratification of free trade agreements with Panama, Colombia, and South Korea. Why can't we negotiate a free trade agreement with Turkey? And if that's technically impossible, as I've been told several times is the case, isn't there some other government-to-government vehicle that can be used to invigorate and incentivize U.S.-Turkey trade?
Well, you know, Turkey has a customs unions agreement with Europe, with the EU, and the rule we've been told by the Turkish government that the rule is that if that you cannot sign a free trade agreement. That agreement does not allow Turkey to sign a free trade agreement with the U.S. unless there's also a free trade agreement between the U.S. and the EU, which there is none. You know, I think what we are focusing on certainly is trying to connect the very vibrant private sector in Turkey, and it's, I mean, the Turkish private sector is very, very entrepreneurial, and I've been to Gaziantep and I've seen the Anatolian tigers, in addition to having some great baklava, you know, they just need an opportunity. They need a partner. They need. This is why the agreement with the SBA, with the Minority Business Association, is so important. What we've been focusing on is trying to engage private sector actors and putting them together in the U.S. You've got, in terms of government programs, Turkey is a very robust user of GSP benefits, so that helps with trade. But I really think that the key here is to try and find more events, more opportunities such as this one to put together the business communities of both countries. And again, from my viewpoint, one low-hanging fruit is the ability to work in third countries. I was in Libya last November, and I was amazed by the amount of construction that was being done by Turkish companies in Libya. It was at a construction site, and they were all Turkish companies. Well, one of the things that we've been talking about is how could we put together some U.S. infrastructure companies with Turkish companies to work in third countries. They've got the experience, we may have the technology. So that's what I think we need to do. We need to focus more on private sector to private sector contacts. And I know that's harder. It's not like waving a magic wand and putting together a free trade agreement. But if we can do that, if we can put together our private sectors, I think we can be quite successful.
Thank you very much. I'm beginning to look around the room, so as people have questions they want to ask, raise your hands. Curran, is it?
Yes.
Curran. Yes, California Curran, right?
Los Angeles.
Los Angeles, thank you.
I appreciate the comments of all the participants. I had the pleasure of traveling to Turkey in September. And was also just taken by the extraordinary entrepreneurship that is visible, certainly from small, medium-sized businesses. So I was really happy to hear about the agreement between MBDA and SBA in terms of providing technical assistance, certainly on this side. I mentioned that I already talked to several about taking a delegation from California to Turkey. What kind of assistance, what kind of role, support can we expect on the Turkish side to help facilitate that and make that
Is that directed towards, I think it has to be a government, yeah.
Yes. Yes. We will welcome you. We have our small business administration that we will, based on the profile of the companies you want to bring on, we will find several alternative matching companies for you. We will make it our first and foremost duty and put people around you. They will take you around Turkey, and they will allow you to meet appropriate companies, and we will help you develop business relationship all the way. As a matter of fact, we would like to also have a welcome from you that we can organize and we can pay for all the expenses, bring some companies here to LA. Yes, to LA to meet appropriate companies here as well. This is the reason why we signed this agreement, not put it on the shelf. We want to have really active, interactive cooperation and companies going and coming and starting to do business.
And we certainly look forward to welcoming those Turkish companies that want to visit California.
Okay, let's fix the date after this meeting. Okay.
Maybe you shout out specifically Institute. They do a great job on the West Coast of representing Turkish interests, and I just appreciate their efforts.
Thank you very much. Minister Kavranoglu, I hesitate to ask this question with Minister Şimşek sitting in the front row, and having heard him earlier today say that he still had a lot of ammunition in his belt to combat adversity as far as the economy is concerned. But Turkey historically has been through boom and bust cycles. And indeed, sometimes they've been caused by such things as current account deficits. Why should we not be concerned that that Turkey is one slip away from a bust?
Okay. The reason is that why we had such a great minister started up good fundamentals in his time for recovery of Turkish economy from such a disaster that we have been through, and now a very sound economic administration. And our Prime Minister just put the fiscal discipline as the foremost importance. And I know that our government is taking measures for a possible crash of Europe and world economy. So therefore, we are extremely careful on budget deficit and not to loosen up and just feel overconfident and start spending. So we are very careful about that. And what else can you do other than fiscal discipline and not overspending and try to increase the fundamentals and make the fundamentals strong? That's what we are doing. We have a very sound banking system. It's very well regulated. We do not allow banks to fool around and make mistakes like happened here, which caused the whole world economy to crash few years ago, and we are still suffering from that. So we are doing, our government and our minister is doing all that can be done, and on a daily basis, we are checking and doing what our central bank is taking measures every day. We are fully confident, but we are careful.
Kamal Dervish.
Just trust me, okay? In the end, that's what it boils down to, right?
We have a saying in the United States: as you leave Washington and you say to someone, "I'm from Washington. I'm here to help you. Trust me." It's a sure sign you're in trouble. Kamal Dervish, the minister has described the prudence of keeping government's eye on the right balls, and there are hundreds of balls in the air right now as far as the economy is concerned. What balls should we be watching?
Well, I have to say that I really do believe that both in terms of public sector balances and the entrepreneurial drive of the Turkish private sector, Turkey really is quite strong. So in the medium to long term, I think there is every reason to be optimistic. I also feel from experience, my own experience of others, when I compare to some other situations in the world, Turkish people as a whole have a kind of common sense, which is quite remarkable. We did go through the 2001-2002 crisis with a lot of pain, but no real social dislocation.
And a lot of resiliency.
A lot of resiliency. So I think all these elements of strength are there. The public sector debt is now below 45% of GDP, which is a very
40.
good.
Below 40.
Below. I mean,
Below 40.
it has reached a very healthy level, and things are transparent. I mean, in the public sector, you can include the state enterprises, the municipalities. One has to measure it in the best possible way. However, there is, unfortunately, one feature of the Turkish economy which is still somewhat worrisome, and that is the quite low national savings rate. And a current account deficit is essentially an imbalance between investment and savings. I mean, it looks from one side as an imbalance between exports and imports, but underneath that is the imbalance between savings and investment. And Turkey, to grow and to be the successful country that we all hope it will be, and already is to some degree, has to invest. I would say at least 25% of GDP. And if it only saves, I mean, this year is very low, 12, 13%, but it's particularly low. Maybe, let's say the average was about 15% of GDP over the last few years. That means you need a current account deficit of 10% and foreign capital to come in to finance that investment. So we really have to correct that in Turkey. There's no magic bullet. There's nothing anybody can do. I don't think there's anything Minister Şimşek can do to just fix that overnight. But I think to be realistic in terms of our growth expectations in the long term, it is quite important that the national savings rate goes up. And that has to do with financial sector policies, with retirement policies. It has to do with macroeconomic policy. The government has to do its part, of course, which it does. But it also has to do with private sector behavior. And the greater, I think, we believe in Turkish growth, and the greater people believe in the long-term stability, and both political, democratic stability, democratic rights, safety of every citizen, all these things in the long run contribute to savings. To me, this is the long-term problem we face. In the short term, there will be an effect from the European crisis. We already feel it. Everybody feels it. We can't avoid it. We don't live in a world by ourselves. But hopefully that crisis will be overcome. I think the fact that the exchange rate is flexible is very important. We don't have the same problem in countries with a fixed exchange rate, so the exchange rate can move to adjust. And as we said, and as the minister said a minute ago, and I'm sure Minister Şimşek also mentioned before, the fiscal prudence has been a constant of Turkish policy, I think, over the last 10 years. Nonetheless, there is going to be an effect of the crisis, and we should not interpret that in a wrong way. So we have to manage that, the crisis, and then we have to manage a long-term savings performance in Turkey that is better than we were able to do before.
Thank you for that. I saw some hands in the back, but I also saw Minister Shimshek's hand go up, so I think that takes precedent. Do we have a microphone for Minister Shimshek here?
Thank you. I just want to add a little bit color to whether or not we'll be able to manage soft landing. Certainly, it's a big rough spot for us, and the current account deficit is very large. It's partly structural, meaning we have extremely low savings rates. We have an industry or production that is, or services concentrated in relatively low value added. Not necessarily low quality, but because when you don't command global brand names and things like that, low profit margins. But also we've had extremely favorable, relatively easy financial conditions, which essentially has triggered consumption. Here's what we're doing. Apart from maintaining a relatively strong fiscal position, I think we've recognized that we needed to be tougher, even with a bit of delay, admittedly. BRSA, our bank regulator, has stepped in, and loan growth, which was running at 40 to 50% year on year in early part of this year, has actually now collapsed to about 10% if you look at the most recent weekly data.
Month on month or year on year?
The most recently weekly data on a year-on-year basis, but annualized. But if you look at more, on a monthly numbers, it's still running at about 20%. So what I'm trying to say is this. There is a very strong effort, monetary, policy, credit policies, to slow down credit expansion. That is obviously going to slow down our growth rate as well, no question about it, because domestic demand in Europe is weak, and our key export markets like Libya, like Syria, like Egypt, where we have over $5 billion of trade surplus, are disrupted through Arab Spring. So all I'm saying is that there are structural elements which require structural fix, and that's why if you invest in R&D center in Turkey, if you spend money on R&D, you can get 200% deduction in terms of your tax base. So we're giving probably one of the most generous incentives in the world if you do R&D in Turkey. We're investing very heavily in our people. I think that's extremely important because in the long run, quality of education in general matters. With private sector, with state, there's a lot of focus on infrastructure as well, to enhance our both railways and road networks, etc. So all I'm saying is that we're doing all the right things, but we need time. And in the meantime, if we can prove that we have a stable and strong government and good fiscal, balance sheet, and maintain a healthy banking sector, then maybe we can persuade people to continue to finance our current account deficit. I think it's important. But in the meantime, we absolutely, and I agree with Minister Dervish, that we have to address the relatively low savings. And so in the short run, I think the key is maintaining fiscal discipline, but also curtailing or slowing domestic demand and credit expansion, which we're doing. That should help. An exchange rate, just to give you some color, on a real effective exchange rate basis, relative to emerging markets, meaning our competitors, the level of real exchange rate now is below 90, which is in many ways, if you were to take 100 as sort of your long-term average, whatever, then actually is now, so there has been a substantial currency adjustment. I'm not in the business of making any comments on the exchange. I'm just saying there has been adjustment. That is also going to help. So loan growth is adjusting. Currency has adjusted. Yes, if there is no demand from Europe and elsewhere, that may still not work, but it's important. And I think more importantly is our focus on R&D. There's been a lot of spending, both by government and private, and in some sectors there's actually response. And Turkish companies, last sentence, is beginning to make a big headway in terms of their presence in global markets, like in terms of retail chains. We have now more than 2,000 Turkish stores globally that sells Turkish or global products. We are beginning to acquire global brand names. In Italy, we acquired white goods arm of Merloni, ceramics companies in Italy, household names like Grundig in Germany, all sorts of food and textiles, etc. So we're beginning to actually change the strategy. So we're acquiring global brand names, because that would help us command higher profit margins, because we do produce first-rate products. We just don't have the high profit margins enjoyed by our competitors. I mean, at least European. So I think we have the right strategy. We need a bit of time, and that time probably it will be given to us if we can prove that we will maintain good policies and good politics. And I think that's where the commitment is very strong, and hopefully it will work out. But we will be affected by the European sovereign debt crisis. There's absolutely no question about it. In fact, we are already being affected. So, but we'll be resilient.
Thank you very much. The minister has willingly taken the witness stand. So as I look out at people who with hands in the air, if you want to ask the minister a question, feel free. Right here.
I have a question to the minister. My name is Adam Kunja. I'm the president of the European Turkish Business Confederation. We are here in the United States, and this event has been organized by Turkish immigrants abroad. And I wanted to hear the role immigrant Turks abroad could play in dynamizing our economies at both sides. We know that America is a land of immigration, and this is the American dream. I represent more than 10,000 Turkish immigrant entrepreneurs in Europe, in Brussels. There are more than 140,000 Turkish immigrant entrepreneurs in Europe. These people were originally from workers' class, without any knowledge of entrepreneurship, without any tradition of entrepreneurship. But after 50 years of presence in Europe, they have been able to form a fantastic potential even for the economic competitiveness of Europe. I really believe that this target group can play a very important role in building bridges between the United States and the Turkish economy. We didn't talk anything about it. Everybody is talking about the role of diasporas for economic dynamism. My question to our minister, is there any specific policy to empower the role of these immigrant Turks abroad? Thank you very much.
I'm not sure that we've got anybody on the panel who can answer that. But there are probably, do you feel comfortable?
We just, last week we had...
Question was directed.
Last week we had a big convention, a gathering of Turkish, diaspora, business community, essentially representative of all the Turks. We have about 6 million Turks living abroad, mostly in Europe. And certainly there has been a change in the nature. Initially we were workers, now we are employers. And I think it's very important. We had a 2-day session where Prime Minister attended and many of my colleagues, and where we developed strategies, how we can strengthen ties with businesses that are set up abroad by Turks and Turkey, but also the rest of the world. So I think there's already a very good strategy, well, at least a framework, in terms of essentially taking advantage of that dynamism that we have. And just one more thing. We're also changing the incentive regime in Turkey. And no longer we think that market will fix everything. we're becoming a lot more interventionist, but in a more transparent way, I have to admit, in a more transparent way, competitive way. We're now really targeting specific sectors or products where we think we have relatively large supply gap locally or large trade gap, and how we could persuade, assuming that it's competitive to produce in Turkey, how to help. And that applies to, obviously, Turkish businesses abroad. When we look at producing a tablet in Turkey for all the students, 18 million students we have in Turkey over the next few years, we also got in touch with the chief technology officer of one of the global company that is Turk. So we already actually have those mechanisms in place. We do get in touch, and we do now organize them, and I think it will help Turkey as well as the businesses set up by Turks overseas to take advantage of.
And where is the point of contact for this?
The point of contact is we've got a minister responsible for diaspora. We've got an agency, several agencies actually. We've got, as well as we've got TOBB, essentially is an umbrella sort of agency that covers all the Turkish businessmen locally but also globally. So I think there is already a framework in place, mechanisms in place, and in fact already there is fair bit of strong interaction between Turkey and those businesses.
Thank you very much. Taner Bey, you are a member of the U.S.-Turkish Business Council, which is a private sector organization that is responsible for advising the two governments with respect to challenges, impediments, opportunities in enhancing and enlarging the trade in the bilateral trade of our two states. Are you prepared to help us to understand what kind of recommendations are coming out of this Business Council to our two governments?
Okay, thank you. This council started this year, and the first meeting was in Istanbul on September 19, 2011, and the next one will be in Washington, D.C. Our first joint recommendations to the both countries, let me say the headings: establishment of joint industrial zones between U.S., Turkey and Iraq, with possible expansion to Middle East and North Africa region. We recommend this to establish joint industrial zones in Turkey to produce technological products like tablets. For example, Apple is already have a company, Foxconn, in Turkey. And also we said we can produce some products in Gaziantep, Adana region, which is very close to Middle East and North Africa. And there are infrastructure already. We are talking.
So it's using the industrial zone concept, which already exists in Turkey, but saying it can be a joint industrial zone with U.S. and Turkish companies having
know-how and entrepreneurs.
And looking over your shoulder, I see that it also says with Iraq, Turkey and Iraq. Is that a recommendation? Or in Iraq, I guess it is. Not with Iraq.
No, it is in Turkey.
In Turkey.
But also with Iraq.
I see. Okay. Now, I should caution everyone that I'm being unfair. These are recommendations which, Jose, I think I'm correct, have been made to the governments, but not yet endorsed. Am I correct?
I'm not familiar with them.
Well, perhaps you know, Taner Bey, have these recommendations been handed to the governments at this point?
Last week.
Last week. Okay.
We sent both sides, but maybe not to the governments.
Only last week, then we can't criticize for, for slowness in responding, right? Okay. Why don't you identify one or two more of these recommendations? You've got probably about 12 of them there, right?
Let me explain one thing about my hometown, Gaziantep. You know, Turkey growth rate was around 10% last year. Gaziantep growth rate was 17%. Our entrepreneurs are very famous in Turkey, like Anatolian tigers. And now we have problem of finding employees in Gaziantep. So we are looking around to find employees. We have incentives, very good incentives in Gaziantep from our government. We have land, we have industrial areas, we have very good municipality infrastructure, but we have problem of finding employees. But this area we are planning to make joint industrial zone is a little bit west of Gaziantep. Adana, Ceyhan, İskenderun, Gaziantep. It's becoming a hub like Rotterdam. There are ports also. Okay. Also, we recommend regional joint construction and infrastructure projects. We talked about already. And another one was about intellectual property rights in pharmaceutical goods. And then defense and aerospace supply chain. You know, Turkish Airlines buying airplanes, and now in Turkey we can produce most of the spare parts or main parts together. Also,
Okay,
yeah,
think that's enough. Let me see where we got. There's a question up here in the back, please,
Oh,
ma'am.
okay.
If I understood correctly, Secretary Fernandez mentioned quadrupling our energy footprint, and Mr. Nabigolu also talked about energy futures. So my question is, by saying quadrupling energy footprint, did you also mean carbon footprint? Or since Turkey is so progressive and advanced on the leading edge in so many areas, are you also addressing environmental sustainability and climate chaos? And right now there are people gathering in Durban for the UN Conference on Climate Change. I imagine Turkey has representatives there also. So is your energy future also dealing with renewables and reducing carbon footprint, or did I understand what you meant by quadrupling energy?
I think Minister Kavranoglu, the question, as I understand it, is Turkey also being diligent with respect to its stewardship responsibilities for things like environment as it moves ahead in meeting its energy needs? Am I correct?
Well, more than diligent, like you're taking the lead in conflict resolution in so many areas. Maybe even diligent, yes, but even taking leadership in that area.
Absolutely. I mean, our government has programs in place to encourage green energy investments in Turkey for wind and solar energy and others. Also for carbon emission, it is very important that we have nuclear power for peaceful purposes, and we are setting up one. I know some environmental organizations don't like this, but whatever is good for France for 60% of their energy need should be also good for Turkey, and we need a developing world will be energy hungry, and we have to have more understanding for them, and the developed world should support them with more reliable nuclear technology. We should not just say, no, don't have nuclear technology, don't have also carbon emission, then what are we going to do? So we have to have energy, and we love our country. We want to keep it clean. It's our motherland, and we want to have clean air, clean, nice forests and everything, but we need energy too. So we are very keen on finding the right balance between environmental concerns, and economic development.
Thank you. Up here, midway up.
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Raj Pekan. I'm a professor and graduate program coordinator at University of Northern Iowa. I'm also serving on the State of Iowa's Wind Energy Commission, which is continuation of the previous question. I believe the energy partnership on the wind is going to be probably the lowest hanging fruit for the American-Turkish partnership in Turkey in long term. So in terms of that, my question is whether to Honorable Davut Kavranoglu or Secretary Fernandez, what will be the additional incentives, in addition to tax and others, to encourage more wind investment? For example, today Iowa is an exemplary state. 20% of our energy comes from the wind, which is the 20% by 2030 of the federal government's goal is already there in Iowa. And there are more than 200 companies in Iowa, making from bolts and nuts to the towers. So I believe it's a great example, can be applied to Turkey also as well in long term. So what will be to encourage this partnership? Thank you.
Mr. Kavranoglu.
Mr. Fernandez mentioned the energy footprint, quadrupling, and the investment in energy and companies visiting Turkey for energy investment. This is very much encouraging. But we also don't want like the old trend that when people say Turkey in the United States, when I was in the 80s, I was here. That means U.S. bases in Turkey and U.S. Needs for defense, and we are the frontier with Russia and things like this. So when you look at Turkey, we should not only look at it as how we can sell wind energy technology to Turkey. We invite you, since you are in Iowa, come to our R&D centers, and we would like to be a part of this development. Let's develop the technology for clean energy in Turkey. I invite people. I try to find the right people to invite them to invest. This is my personal effort. That we would like to encourage developing technologies in Turkey to have, we see our largest deficit is in energy. We are spending about $40 billion annually for energy. 50 now? Yeah, see, when the exchange rate goes up, so we are spending a lot in it. And I know that, for example, for natural gas, we are about 40-something% of our electricity is coming from burning Russian natural gas in Turkey. And the efficiency is about 50%. This is a disaster. We pay like $40 billion and you burn it, and half of it goes to the air, and it also destroys the environment. So I encourage everybody, high-tech companies, that we will fund your R&D. Please come to Turkey and develop more efficient ways of burning or other ways of converting natural gas into electricity. So for wind energy, it's very nice, but I gather that the technology is very expensive. They are charging a lot for the installing, the payback, because of the fact that they are charging a lot for the wind turbines. The payback period is very long. So to make this shorter, we have to invest in R&D in Turkey, and we have to have low-cost wind turbines. So it all boils down to R&D and high-tech industry. And that is the way forward for us. We have no other way. We don't have large oil reserves or other underground resources in Turkey. We have our young population. We are very enthusiastic about investing in R&D and having a high-tech technology for energy or other sectors. We invite everybody to invest in Turkey for R&D. We will pay for all your expenses. Just come and bring your know-how. Our finance minister is here. He hears me and he approves that. Okay?
Thank you very much. Secretary Fernandez, I know that General Electric, for example, has recently signed a partnership on wind energy in Turkey. What can you add to this as far as renewables and energy efficiency is concerned in the partnership between Turkey and the United States?
Well, in our Economic Partnership Commission conversations, we talk about energy all the time. And because the Turkish government has expressed a desire to focus to expand its renewable energy on research and development as well as power plants, we're concentrating on renewable energy. And the Commerce delegation that's going to Turkey in the next couple of months to bring 17 energy companies, all 17 of those are renewable energy companies. So that's something where we see both a need and an opportunity. And these are companies that understand that in addition to simply selling their equipment, the Turkish government and the Turkish people want to create a partnership, and that's something that it's a win-win. If you make it work, it's a win-win because Turkey can be a springboard to a number of markets around the region, and so they understand that, and that's really what the Commerce Department is focusing on right now.
And it's actually this next month. It's in the month of December, I think, that Sanchez, Deputy Secretary Sanchez is going to be leading the delegation to Turkey. If you would like to be in touch with them, talk to me right afterward, and I'll give you a contact. Other questions? Over here, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Emre Yilmaz from San Diego, California. I was wondering, I wanted to ask a question about this recent so-called Arab Spring. I know that in a short term, the private industry is getting affected by this because of the ongoing construction contracts in Libya and so on. And probably Gaziantep is one of the cities that are getting affected by Syria. I just want to see, on the other hand, some people says that we could turn this into opportunity as far as rebuilding those countries. I just want to see how Turkey is seeing this. Is this an opportunity or is this a concern for Turkish economy? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The way we look at it is, first and foremost, it's an ethical problem. Whatever it is good for Turkish people, we would like all people around us and all the people around the world have the same standards. We demand, and we will never give up on that. We want human rights and prosperity for all Turkish people, independent of their religion, their race, and their ethnicity. We want everybody to have human rights and democracy in Turkey. Therefore, we want the same thing for all these countries, regardless of their economic consequences. Of course, we are concerned about also how it's going to affect Turkish economy. And maybe in the short run, as it affects very negatively the people of those countries, it will have some effect on our economy. But in the long run, I am sure it will pay, democracy and human rights will pay back for those people as well as for us. And we are supporting the people's desires to have a more humanly regime and to live in a better society, because nowadays the whole world is like a village. Everybody knows what's going on in any other country, and they know what's going on in the US, how people live in the US, and how people live in Turkey, and they want to have the same. And now they see that being a Muslim does not mean you have to be like their own rulers. So they want to have a similar prime minister, similar finance minister, similar government. And they want to be treated good. So that is our concern foremost. And we are taking measures, our government is taking measures to balance any effect that it's going to have as well.
If I could spin this a little bit differently. Without question, one of the most important factors when Arab Spring countries have looked at Turkey as either a model or an inspiration. I know Turkey's uncomfortable with the notion of model, a little more comfortable with the notion of inspiration. This is a discussion about U.S.-Turkey cooperation. Is cooperation with the United States an asset or a debit? Is it positive or negative, or is it neutral in terms of Turkey's effectiveness as an inspiration for the Arab Spring countries?
I believe it's a great positive. And Turkey now is became a brand name for telling the truth no matter what. Okay, this gained us lots of respect around the Middle East and in all around the world. So we are not changing opinion on the same topic depending on which country we are dealing with. So having this ethical behavior is gaining lots of trust for us. It's an opportunity for the US to work with us closely in economical ties to also address to those markets as well. So our relationship and our economic cooperation makes a lot of sense to improve Turkey's economy and to make it a place of radiating freedom and human rights and economic prosperity to the region and all around the world, to inspire, as you said.
And cooperation with the United States is positive in that regard.
Yes.
Come on,
I just want to add one thing, because I think this is such an important point, because it does concern the stability of the whole area which we're in. Turkey is the center of that area. And I think what I would agree very much with what the minister said, that it's really the example that counts the most. And it's much more important, I think, both for the US and for Turkey to live by our principles rather than try to interfere directly in other people's countries. I think in the long run, that soft power carries the widest. And I think the US under the Obama administration has adopted that principle with sincerity. Of course, there can be moments of humanitarian intervention that are needed to save lives, and that's a separate matter. But the basic rule for stability of the whole region, I think, should be that the people of all countries determine their own future the way they want to determine it, without foreign interference, with help and sympathy, but not with interference. But the examples are important, and in that sense, by working on some of the things that have worked in the United States, whether it's political or economic or in Turkey, and getting people to understand that, I think this is the best way to help stability. In the Turkish case, I think we have made great progress as a country on the road to a real democracy. It took a while, always takes a while, it never happens overnight. I do believe it's very important that we continue, and that we also realize that democracy is more than just elections are very important, but it's more than that. It's institutions, it's the respect for the opposition, for everybody's opinion, for individual human rights, and a certain balance between various powers in society that make the system long-term stable. And if we're able to deepen that and strengthen that even more, in my view, that's the best contribution we can make to the region. And we can do it with the United States.
Thank you very much. We've got time for one more question. I see a hand in the back, please.
My name is Mehmet Kılıç from the Turkish Cultural Center, New York. My question is about the Arab Spring. In the Middle East and North Africa, the social change impact the country and hopefully will have a economic growth in the near future. That's our hope. And on the other hand, when we look at the European Union, the economic crisis impacts the European Union in a social change. So the effect of the two things that happened recently has a social change. As Turkey, we consider that as a bridge between East and West. So how do you think this change in the Middle East and North Africa and the change in European Union could affect Turkey?
Question, as I understand it, is the reverse of what we've just been talking about. What is the consequence going to be on Turkey, on Turkey's economic and social life of what's going on in this region? Is that correct?
I mean, economic crisis in Europe changed the governments. The Prime Minister of Greece has changed, Italy has changed, and the change in the Middle East and North Africa changed the dictatorship. So, as Turkey is in between Europe and the North Africa and the Middle East, how Turkey could be influenced or how Turkey could influence?
Anybody feel comfortable in answering that? Let me offer my own comments. Earlier, there was a remark which dealt with synergies, not talking about this issue, but synergies. And frankly, I see enormous synergies in what's going on in the transition states and what's going on in Turkey as well. I think Turkey is indeed an inspiration for the countries of North Africa and the Middle East, not least of all because Turkey's own successes. And similarly, seeing that sort of success and that sort of inspiration elsewhere, I think can only add to a stimulation for Turkey to continue on its road of reform, which it's engaged in, and which has frankly been a very attractive part of the inspiration. So I think my own answer to that would be positive for both.
So would I say.
I want to thank all of our panel members and our fifth panel member as well, Minister Shimshek. Thank you very much.